Yeah, good day again. This is me, Chinatu Zewu, cybersecurity consultant with Rostec Cyber-Crime Solutions Limited. And we've been in this series as a way of, summarizing the Cybersecurity Awareness Month 2024. And we've been on practical approach to combating cyber crimes. Practical approach to combating cyber crimes. We've done the introductory aspect of it. Please, if you've not listened to the video, please try to get a copy of it and listen to the introductory aspect, the concept of cybersecurity, and the identification and classification of your information assets. And now we are looking at protecting your information assets. This is my own way, of summarizing the Cybersecurity Awareness Month. And I want to appeal to everyone to please, as you're listening, share with others, with the entire public, share with your colleagues, and then you'd be doing me a huge favor. Thank you very much. Now, we have we've understood what this protecting your information access is more like, reinforcing what we discussed in the overview during the concept of cybersecurity. Remember, I talked about the concept of confidentiality, integrity, and availability. And then now we've identified ourselves, we've classified ourselves, we've done our risk analysis, and we're like, no, we've not yet done our risk analysis. We've just identified ourselves and classified them. Now, before we will go ahead, okay, we've classified them, and now we need to understand, let's assume that we've identified, we've classified, and we've done our risk analysis, even though we are coming up to discuss risk analysis session, after this. But then it's important for you to understand, what you need to do to protect your assets. you know you need to understand control, security measures, safeguards, in depth, multi-layer security. You need to understand how it works and at what point we will apply. You really need to understand this very well, so that by the time we start working on risk assessment and then we start treating the risks, you now understand where each of the controls should apply. But before then, you must understand the real concept around protecting your information assets. So we've identified, we've classified. Now, I tried to explain to you, when we were discussing the concept of CIA triad, I tried to explain the fact that, in every life, every sphere of life, every sphere of business, we look at three categories. We looked at the aspect of administration. How are you managing your business? What are the governing principles or the policies around your business? What is the mission, the vision, the belief, the philosophy of your business? It's centered around your personal life, your business, and the same way it applies to your information assets, and your organization. So you have to, we've identified, we've classified. Now we need to, narrow it down, narrow our asset identification, asset classification, risk assessment, and business impact. We have to narrow it down into three areas, and that is the administrative part of it, the technical part of it, and then the physical part of it. So in this particular scenario, we're going to call them the administrative controls, the technical controls, and the physical controls. Every business runs with it, even small businesses. You must have the parts, in fact, the vision of the business, the proposals, the propositions, the value propositions, they must apply. Your operating manual, your policy. Of course, you must have documented something, you must have endorsed, you must have registered your business with CAC, and then you must have endorsed and passed through all the processes. It applies, and that is what runs your business. You must understand your business should have a website. The corporate image of your business, they are all centered around the administrative aspect of your business. And then we talk about the technical aspects. These are the infrastructures, where you have the IT infrastructures, you have your access control, you have your computer, you have your hardware, you have your software, you have your databases, you have your devices, your computers, everything are centered around the computer, your data centers, they are all around technical control. Even your smart devices, like your television, they are all around technical controls. And then we talk about physical controls. Physical controls are those controls that are physical. You apply the physical controls you apply, to your devices, to your environment, to all the things that you see and you touch around you. And physical controls are actually the first line of controls. You know, they are the first line, because if you are entering the house now, the first thing you see is a gate. You know, that is a control, or entrance door close. And then you start knocking. That is a control, and that's the physical control. And then you go to your computer. The first thing you do is to enter your password. That is a control, and it's a technical control. The first thing you see is your device, and then trying to enter password is like a technical control. Then anything you do to protect your physical device, maybe you chain it, you tie it to your desk with a chain, or to your chair, so that nobody can carry it. That's a physical control. you know Anything you put in place to put as an escort to your data center, monitoring the people entering and not entering, that is a physical control. So anything you put as your, like, most organizations will have turnstile doors, dead man doors. In the banks, they have dead man doors. All that are physical controls. And then the technical controls are all those controls you apply on the system, like your password, and that is the majority of it is what we are going to discuss here. But that we will be discussing more of technical controls here does not mean that you must ignore the administrative controls or physical controls. Oh, no way. Just like I showed you, that triangle, that CIA triangle. The same way it applies with the same way it applies with the concept of administrative controls, technical controls, physical controls. Like I was illustrating then on my company logo is umbrella. So it's an umbrella. And then, why the umbrella is the ultimate goal, the ultimate objective that you want to achieve. That's the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of your assets. Then you need those administrative controls, technical controls, physical controls, to back it up. You need them, you need to categorize them, streamline them, in order to ensure that, your organization is running with an acceptable level of confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Now, let's assume that the administrative, the technical, the physical, they are coming underneath the umbrella, underneath the coverage. That's what you see. That is the first stem there. The first rod. Remember, you are holding the rod. But these are the things that are actually holding the umbrella, and then assuring that confidentiality, integrity, and availability. If your physical controls are not right, then your technical controls will be in trouble. you know like, remember I said your physical control is your first line of control. If anything goes wrong, or armed robbers, physical armed robbers, bombers, if they bombard your office, they can carry your computers. Shebi, you understand? So by the time they carry your systems, your infrastructures, then there is really nothing to talk about. Your technical control has been tampered with, and then, of course, there is nothing to talk about. So you really have to, pay attention to each of them. And what I advise organizations is, if you are in an organization and you are the CISO, or the cybersecurity professional, then That does not mean that you should not relate with the physical control guy. That security man, the person in charge of the security, physical security of the organization. You must respect him more. You must respect him. You must respect him like every other head of division, you know, as serious as that. So a CISO must relate with the physical control team, and must relate with the corporate image team, the administrative team, right from the top management, you know. You must work, collaborate together, you know, to achieve a holistic security around your information assets. It is very, very important. So I put it here like the administrative, technical, and physical control types are first layer under the umbrella of the CIA triad. You know, that is the first layer you will see there because they are categorized. Now, I will tell you why they are categorized and why they have to be there. Now, after that middle layer, you know, underneath the umbrella, then you can now talk about the handle side of the umbrella. You know, that's where you have all the measures of control, you know. They could be preventive control, dictative control, deterrent control. We have about 7 of them. 7 security controls that you have to apply on each of the three types of controls. You know, you have preventive controls, you have dictative controls, deterrent controls, recovery, corrective, you know, compensative, and directive controls. So these are the granular controls under each control type. So at the end of the day, you can now have preventive administrative control. Now, if I ask you to give me an example of a preventive administrative control, of course, your policies, your standards, you know, the governance of the organization, the philosophy, the vision, the mission of the organization, you know, they all fall under, you know, oh no, sorry, the policies, the standards, you know, they all fall under directive. There is another term, the directive administrative control, you know, acceptable use policy, non-disclosure agreements, they fall under directive administrative control. Then you talk about rules, policies, you know, your policy, whatever you draft, you know, your documentations, you know, sorry, anything that is that has to do with governance of the organization falls under directive. You know, mandatory governance of the organization falls under directive um administrative control. Then anything that has to do with preventing, like you have your policies, more like a set of rules, you know, governing your organization, you know, a set of rules that every stakeholder must, you know, oblige to. Those are preventive administrative controls, you know. You have them in form of your operating manuals, you have them in form of your procedures, your guidelines, you know, your policies, your security blueprints, you know, they fall under preventive administrative control. And then you have dictative, you know, anything that goes with, you know, dictating, monitoring, you know. So anything that has to do with dictating bad guys, or documentation on how bad guys, you know, should be dictated or what have you, falls under dictative administrative control. Anything related to documentation, you know, documents, binding documents, you know, agreeable documents, acceptable use documents, they all fall under administrative control. And then you have deterrent control. So most of them, you have preventive administrative control, dictative administrative control, deterrent administrative control, recovery administrative control, corrective administrative control, and then compensative administrative control. Of course, directive administrative control. I always like to put it as the 7th one. Now, you have technical control. Most of these controls we are calling about, most of them are well applied under technical controls. So you have like your password now, we keep hammering, you know, use your password, you know, make sure you that I writing it down, writing the steps to follow to make sure you leverage on good password security is preventive administrative control. and then applying the techniques around, how you must apply your password, the techniques. For example, most organization will go to your databases or go to your core application to build a password policy, to make sure that, password, the number of days will not exceed 30 days, and then it expires and you change your password. And to make sure that anytime you are logging into any new application, as you are logging in, you just enter your password, you just log in and change your and with a new password, at first log on, so configuring the system, to allow that, and then restricts and limits users from doing setting their password anyhow. Also, the one that will make sure that you only go with minimum of 16 characters in applying password, all that will be applied in your password management system. But then the policy, the documentation that is covering that policy is seen as preventive administrative control. And then the techniques around it is the preventive technical control. And then we have dictative control, like your intrusion dictation system, like your what do you call it, your dog, your CCTV, all that falls under dictative. Your CCTV could be dictative technical control. And then you have your dictative physical control, like your dog, when dog is sorry, when dog is actually a deterrent, discouraging people. Deterrent physical control. That's if you are looking at dog. If you are looking at your fence is like preventive physical control. So you look at encryption. Encryption is preventive technical control. So you try to make it very, very granular, you know, or the granularity of these controls are quite overwhelming. There are too many. And you apply them with, it is actually at this level now that we talk about the concept of multi-layered control. So you build your preventive controls, like your encryption, your password, and then you also come back again. Oh, in case your preventive controls do not apply or they do not work, then you move on to dictative controls to try to monitor. That's where your login, your logs, your security information and event management system. That's now why they will apply. You start to monitor what went wrong, as in who accessed the system, who circumvented the preventive controls, and what really happened at what point in time. That's when you have your trails and all that. Audit trails and all that all fall under dictative controls. Then you have some of them like prevention controls. Intrusion prevention control will, try to apply the controls, try to monitor, dictate the errors, and then also alert on the errors, and at the same time prevent the errors from applying. That's actually what most antivirus and applications would do. You apply them, you design them to, with signatures and payloads in mind. So anyone that looks like it, they will flag it. They would, flag it, and at the same time, prevent it from infecting the system or clean it off. So you have to look at it critically, and then my assignment to my all the people I mentor, at this level now, is to go back home and then categorize your information access, identify them, classify them, and then try to group them into three, like administrative, technical, physical. And then as you're applying them, administrative, technical, physical, and then you now try to apply the measures of control around them. These measures of control will be discussed comprehensively, by the time we get to the cyber crimes proper, the cyber attacks proper, and then the controls around them. So just notice that we have about 7 measures of control. That is the preventive control, dictative control, deterrent control, recovery control, corrective control, compensative control, and what do you call it, directive controls. And that is what we are going to be discussing in the next slide. Then understanding the above concepts, understanding what this particular slide now is all about. The CIA triad, that umbrella, envisage an umbrella, that CIA triad. At the middle of it, you have the control types, the administrative control, technical control, physical control, and then underneath it, towards the north side, you now have all the measures of controls that we're talking about. No, 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 no. On underneath the administrative controls, you now have the 7 measures of control: preventive, detective, deterrent. Then at the edge, at the knob directly, you now apply the control. Too many controls, and too many of them keep emerging. They keep evolving, too many controls at the moment, encryption in different forms, passwords in different forms, multi-factor authentication in different forms, data loss prevention. They keep working on them, they keep improving on them, and they keep increasing. The list keeps widening up. So we're going to discuss. So you look at them critically and then understand each and every bit of it, and then with multi-layered controls in mind. So we don't need to discuss much around this because I've already talked about it. What administrative controls entail, what technical controls entails, the flow around your system, the logical flow around your system, and they comprise implementation, maintenance, and overall management, your access control mechanisms, your passwords, all the techniques and mechanisms around them, they are all fall under your technical controls. And then your physical controls, like I said, the first line of control, and it comprises all that you put in place to protect, control, and monitor the facilities, your environment, the perimeter of the facilities and all that. And then the concept of preventive detective. I will quickly explain this concept, and then after explaining this concept, maybe we would end this particular session. So now, like I talked about preventive administrative control, preventive technical control, preventive and physical control. So all the preventive controls, those are the measures, that you put in place. Your aim is to mitigate threats, or to prevent threats, or to reduce threats. To reduce threats, as in to reduce the vulnerabilities. They aim at blocking threats, and attackers, preventing them from accessing and destroying their information assets. So they can come in form of your policies, which is administrative, your access controls, which is technical. Your access control is like controlling access to your systems, to applications, to the operating system. And they can come in form of perimeter defense, like your fence, the fences that you get, they are all under preventive physical controls. So preventive measures are actually the first line. You try to prevent, you try to put gates in place, put your fence in place. That is the first line of control, first whatever. And then after that, you now think of, what if preventive doesn't come in place? Do I have CCTV in place, to monitor and see and see what really happened, or who could have carried the television in the night when everybody was sleeping? So that's where it now takes us to dictative control. You know, dictative control here is like, CCTV I'm talking about can also act as deterrent control. If an armed robber or a thief gets to know that, oh, you have CCTV in place, so they would want to cool down, they want to mellow down, in their excesses. So unless they turn themselves to something else. Now, the security measures that aim at discouraging attackers from exploiting the information assets, They aim at discouraging deterrent control, they discourage the armed robber, discourage the bad guys, from having their way. Those are the discourage the sorry deterrent controls, including high feet fence, like your fencing is when you hear that there is wire, electric wire that can electrocute the armed robber, on a fence, that could be discouraging enough, you know and then when you hear that there is CCTV on course, to see what goes around, physically, that should also be deterrent control. CCTV comes in various ways. The configuration around CCTV is technical, and then CCTV monitoring people, is physical. Okay, so they're putting it in place, configuring it into the system to monitor is in technical. So most of them are mix of technical, mix of physical. Just like I said in about the CIA triad, the controls, the physical, sorry, administrative controls, technical controls, and what do you call it? Physical controls, they go hand in hand. They cannot do without the other. They have to collaborate. So too many collaborations are required in cybersecurity. So it is not a lone ranger. You can't do it alone. You have to collaborate to really get, to the root of it and get to your desired estate. Then we have dictative controls, deterrent controls. Then we have dictative controls, monitoring things, covering all the tools you use to monitor, audit logs, intrusions, and then but when a policy is violated, you should be able to monitor the logs and understand who actually violated the policy. So all these fall under, defense, the multi-layered security. So when we talk about corrective, let's assume that the armed robber, has succeeded, in doing terrible things on the system. So what are the measures you now put in place proactively at beforehand, that will ensure that, whatever damage that they did could be corrected immediately, could be corrected within the acceptable timeline, so that it will not affect your business customers, it will not affect, anything, it will not affect, the availability of the resources. So whatever measure you put in place is known as incident response plan, so, and it is a fix, it's seen as a fix or a corrective measure. Then recovery measure is actually most times data related, when things have gone wrong, when there is disaster, let's assume there is disaster, or your data, you are experiencing crash of your hard drive. When your hard drive is crashed, you have to have a backup. So backup could be that your recovery measure, to your backup plan is your administrative control, and the backup proper is your recovery plan, to make sure that, at any point your hard drive is crashed, you have your daily backup, you have your hourly backup to quickly restore onto your system, so that the impact will not be much. The impact of whatever went wrong will not be much. Now, what will make your hard drive to crash? It could be because you don't have an updated antivirus in your system. So your system could have gotten infected, and then, so by the time you understand, you try to monitor what happened, and then you try to, when you understand that, what happened is actually out of place, you now look for how to recover, how to rely on your external backup, or even your another site. That's, you can call it business continuity site, your off site, if it is a natural disaster that has really affected your business or affected the environment or location of your business. So you have to put all these plans in place. These are all measures of control. You don't just rely on preventive controls alone, you rely on each of them. So in your organization, you try to put them in place one after the other. Start with identifying your assets, and then categorize them, your business into administrative, technical, and physical. And then you try to analyze preventive controls, where do they apply, dictative controls, deterrent controls. You make sure that you put them in place. Is important, because that is actually what the concept of multi-layered control is all about. We call it defense in depth, defense in depth, so that if anything goes wrong with one layer of control, you can still fall back to the second layer, third layer, so that you don't lose, the organization does not lose everything, your entire kingdom, because of what happened. So the directive control is now coming up here. In directive control, you are looking at, all those controls that are driven from the top, mandatory controls. Those kind of controls, they build it in the system as your baseline control. Any control that is directive, it could be from your local regulation, based on your jurisdiction. Those are the ones you configure on your system, and you apply on your employment manual and your policies as baseline. They are mandatory. So because they are coming from, they are high level management concepts. Okay, sorry. Okay. Now, compensating controls are those controls you put in place, you don't really have all it takes. Very soon now, we're going to discuss risks, and by the time we start discussing risks, then you understand that, most of these controls, you don't just apply them. We'll get there. So now, this one, by the time you do your work, you do your risk analysis, and now you understand the value of the asset, how much you bought the asset and how much you are making from the asset. And then by the time you understand that, and then it now happens that the control that you want to apply on the asset, let's say you want to get a firewall, to safeguard this, and then you now understand that the firewall is more expensive, than what you are making from the assets, and then from your revenue around the assets, and then from the total value of the asset. So at that point in time, you don't even need to go about it. We are not applying controls that will be more expensive, that will be higher than the value of the assets on its own. At the end of the day, there will not be any profit. The organization will not be able to make any profit. So there's really no need. So what you do is to look for a compensating control. That is a security measure you apply, when, the ideal security measure you should have applied is more expensive, than the actual value of the asset. So you use it to make it up. Most times it could be your antivirus program. It could even be another control existing, that is running around the organization. You use that to make it up. And then those are the measures of control that we put in place. So when you now mix it up, two or more or too many of them all together make up a layered security control. And that is about the concept of defense in depth. So in protecting your information access, we've just understood, how you can prioritize your security measures based on the classification level. Before you must understand all these concepts that we've talked about now, and then, and then understand what it all entails, based on the classification level and its criticality of the information assets. In most cases, the security measures firstly applied on the most highly classified assets. You first of all apply them on your most classified assets before others. Most times they are, mandated, like your baseline control, or they are automated, on your assets. and most of them, it depends on how the value you place on them. So you must have a clear understanding of the ideal security measures to apply on each of them. So that's where we are going now, on the ideal security measure. Then you must ensure that the cost of security measures applied on each asset is not more than the actual cost or value of the asset. It's very, very important for you to understand all these terms. It's very important, so that by the time we start treating the cyber crimes, the attacks, you don't just go and start applying. Most of them, the profit, the bottom line of the business is even less than what you apply. So how is it? The essence of all that we are doing is to meet the business objectives, is to help support the business to make profit. If what you're applying is now beyond the profit margin of the business, then there is a problem. So we really need to get it right, and then keep reviewing these sessions, keep reviewing it. And then, in protecting your information access, your security measures must align with the business objectives, like I said, especially that of the asset owner. All stakeholders, must be involved, to understand, and determine the ideal security measures, which we'll be discussing, in the next slide. So cybersecurity is everybody's responsibility. Everybody's affected here. So some information access could be protected by applying any or some or all of the confidentiality, integrity, and availability principles. It all depends on the criticality level of the information assets. So please help me to share these slides. Share. You'll be doing me a huge favor sharing, because that is my own way of, commemorating the Cybersecurity Awareness Month 2024. Thank you for listening, and cheers. See you in the next session, determining the ideal security measure. That is the risk analysis. Please make sure you listen to it. It's important. So that you understand that, what risk is all about and how to go about it. Thank you, and bye.